Um, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to another session of Jesus in the City, brought to you by Heart and Art Foundation. And I have with me today Pastor Tope Shaba and Mr. Emmanuel Tarfa. Tarfa, can you please greet the audience and Tope Shaba, please?
Oh, Nelson, thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. Emmanuel Tarfa?
Uh, Hello, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank, thank you. So our topic today is interrogating faith, a place for reason. The question arises from the consideration that faith sometimes look unreasonable, and people of reason, people of intellect, people in the marketplace, people in the research centers and universities are usually not necessarily the people of faith. And I'm sure you have different opinions to that. So I want to first start by asking Mr. Tafa, you're a businessman, you're a consultant. What is your take on this matter about faith versus reason?
Well, let me cut the joke. I'm on the show to learn more about it too. Anyway, don't mind me. So, if I understand what we're trying to address is you want to know reason whether the moment you begin to uh, operate in the measure of logic, does that mean it contradicts your faith? And most times, faith as we know it does not. I think that's what we're trying to answer. Is there a reconciliation? What is the relationship between logic and faith? And they say, can they operate? I mean, can they not work together? And if they can work together, at what point should they work together? If they work together, and what point is it universal or it's only select? So I think those are the questions we hope to address at the end of this broadcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, apparently, Tafa, we're not hearing you properly. We're not hearing you.
Hello, did you all hear me? I mean, first of all, did you hear me?
I can hear you now, but when you were talking at some point, you went off.
Okay. So very quickly, I said what we are here to understand and learn is if faith and reasoning can work together. If they cannot work together, if they work together but at the same times. What is reasoning? Reasoning is logic, predictability, in some cases scientific, while faith is when you hear from God, receive a word, and you have to act on it, and it does not appear logical sometimes well to some people. So I think we're here to address the relationship or the dichotomy, if there's any, between both.
Yeah. You're right. You can continue. So,
I mean, that's what, so I was just giving a context.
yeah. So, what's your own take on it?
Well, so before I do that, very quickly, there are three schools of thoughts. There are some people who believe that they're not related. That when you're in faith, it will never be logical. So, for instance, some people don't save, some people don't invest. They say they lead by faith. Things like that. And that's an example. The second scenario is some people say faith must be logical. So it is only when it's logical that it's even actually faith, that is a balance.
Yeah.
Some people don't even believe in faith at all. They put faith in a different context, and it has to do with things that are supernatural completely. Every other thing should be logical. Their marriages, their relationships, and so on and so forth. But I think to understand it is to first decompose what the two things mean. There are thousands and one definitions of faith, and there's a typical Hebrews 11:1. But that Hebrews 11:1 has received so many interpretations that we're all now probably, we're all overwhelmed by, what it means. In my opinion, faith is simply doing as you have heard God told you do.
Okay.
So when God interrupts your regular schedule, call it regular, and gives instructions, then it becomes an act of faith. So for instance, you wake up in the morning, you have your bath, you dress up, you leave the house. That's normal routine. The Bible encourages us to be hardworking, to wake up, and to face our business and be diligent. That in itself is a word of God. But when God now interrupts that schedule and says, today, Nelson, you're going to the office, so you're going to sit at home and you're going to pray, and in that process, I will tell you what to do. And then you sit at home and then you receive a call, and blah, blah, blah. The point is that interruption is an act of faith because God intervened. But I think the dichotomy begins when there was no express, or we thought we heard God. Then we begin to operate in certain things that we were not, asked to do. Then at that point, I think we've gone out of joint, or it's no more logical. So it will be logical if God tells you to do it, and at the end of the day, with the result, means justified it. But it is not. It has to be, for me. I feel it's an interruption. It's out of the norm. But the regular norm, because whatever you are asked to do, typical routine, we live by the word of God. So it's within the confines of what God has already enabled us to do as people, and He has given us those overarching rules and regulations. If you understand what I mean, I'll stop there.
Okay, Pastor Tope, what do you think about what I've just said now? His definition of faith and the application that arises from that definition.
Hello, Nelson.
Yeah. I was asking, what do you think of what Tafa has just said?
Oh, yeah.
His definition and then this
Yeah.
conclusion that arose from that definition. If you don't mind, you could put your video on again. We're not seeing.
No, my video is actually on.
I can see you.
Well,
okay.
yeah. Let me just take it from the three schools of thought that Tarfa mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There are those who believe it by faith alone, and he gave an example of some people don't invest, maybe they don't invest or things like that. And then secondly, there are those who don't even believe that, they hold on to logic and they believe faith doesn't have any place within logic. And there are those who believe that which is of faith is also logical. It's also logical. This is the way I say it. I think I like one of the examples he gave. For instance, your daily schedule is interrupted, but I must say that it is at the end of the day, it is when you go revisit what happened that we can begin to establish logic within that which God, with the claim that you are making that God actually interrupted your schedule. I don't know if I'm making sense to us. So if he says I should stay, if he says, every day I wake up, I go to work, and there's a particular day he says, just stay back, just as Emmanuel Tarfa said, and then I stay back and I observe at the end of the day certain things that happen that if I had not obeyed that injunction, those things, I will have missed those things. Now, I'm saying that it is when the event had already taken place and you are appraising the situation that you are able to establish the logicality between that voice that you heard and the obedience and the event, what later happened. And I must say that it might take more than one occurrence for logic to be established. As the way I see it, that will happen in different ways, in different manners, and you will be able. So, in the expression of the interaction between faith and reason, you will be able to justify it within the experiences that you have had, not just one. So you are able to show the logic, the link, the sequence between different experiences. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
No, can I rephrase? You are saying that when you are interrupted by acts of faith of God, intervening in your schedule, it's not always apparent that it is logical, but that eventually it always shows to be logical, and perhaps that might require more than one intervention for you to see the logic. Is that what
That's
you're
the point
saying?
I'm making.
Look,
That's the point I'm making.
I personally agree with you too that God's interactions in our lives are always logical. Even the most one of the biggest act of faith is the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, His death, crucifixion, burial and resurrection, and even ascension. During the if you were there when that was playing out, it doesn't make sense, but now it does. It makes a whole lot of sense. So what you are saying is that it takes events and time for us to say if an action is logical or not, and that in most actions of faith that they are logical.
Absolutely, Nelson. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Mr. Tarfa, you're a businessman. What do you think are the common
Well,
um,
Nelson, sorry, hello,
yeah,
Nelson.
go ahead, we're listening. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, no,
I
no,
wanted
no,
to
no,
just
no, no, no.
that's
Say what you want to say. I don't want you to miss that point. Go ahead
okay.
and say it. Yes.
No. So I'm closing the thought, so we're on the same page. But I'm just trying to emphasize that please take note of the word interruption.
Yeah.
In other words, everything has a routine. There's a routine in the kingdom, But when even a routine, for instance, love your neighbor as yourself. But there's some times that God can say, withhold that love for that. So I want to pay attention to those interruptions. I mean, the typical process, a man is 9 months and a child is born, but there was an interruption. Jesus came. So that interruption that comes directly from God to change the course of history and so on, that is the act of faith. The man Abraham was on his own, and God says, "Get up." That was an interruption. Leave your father, leave your mother. Nobody leaves. I mean, everybody wants to be around their family.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be there for their family. Take care of your parents. That's what you'll be hearing logical things like, "I want to take care of my parents. I want to take care of my."
Yeah.
God interrupts. But I think my concern to interrupt our schedule. So they have not heard him. He's not asking you to go the extra, pack your load and say you're leaving Lagos. You didn't hear him. He didn't instruct you. So I think that is where the error comes from. And most times there will be wisdom is proven by its fruits. You will know at the end of the day that was a logical decision, or which is what Pastor Tope said also, that time determines that. But time is not 2-3 years. It's years later when the story of Abraham is written, we can look back and say, it was right for him to have left. And in that process, God trained him, and he was father of nations. He was even doing it to raise 300 men almost 300 men in an army to fight 5 kings. Kept my thinking.
Okay. Okay, lovely.
To understand that introduction. Yes.
If I understand correctly what you are saying that there are a lot of people that are taking illogical actions in the name of faith, simply because
Yes,
faith always looks illogical sometimes. So because of the fact that faith looks illogical sometimes. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Because faith looks illogical sometimes, that someone can take illogical decision and call it faith simply because faith looks illogical sometimes. Is that what you are saying?
Fantastic. So they are taking they are looking at the template, the letter, but missing the spirit.
Yeah.
Taking the letter.
You're right. Our viewers, I think at this junction, I would like to reiterate the points these two gentlemen just made, that it is true that working with God and having a relationship with Him might require us to take some certain apparently illogical actions. But if you are truthful and if you stay the course, you eventually find out that those actions were logical. So that the fact that things of faith look illogical sometimes does not mean that illogical actions are faith actions. So I cannot walk up, stand up tomorrow and do everything I want to do and call it faith without hearing God. And that God is not foolish, that anytime God speaks, there's a wisdom to what He's saying. And sometimes if you don't understand that wisdom, it might be good to step back a little bit and get a clearer picture before you act. But there's always a wisdom. There's always a wisdom to the speakings of God. Pastor Tope, I saw you nodding. Do you want to add something more to that?
Hello, Nelson.
Yes, sir. I saw you nodding. Do you want to add something?
You introduced a word that I believe is very, very important. And that word for me defines a lot of things, especially when it comes to distinguishing between that actions that are illogical. Actions that may be logical, but it's not within the realm of faith. Okay, and that word you introduced is the word relationship. Okay, is the word relationship, because I was about to ask, how do I know that I have heard God to the point of interrupting, to the point of changing my normal course of doing things? How do I know that I've done that? And I think for me, I don't know what your own views are. The word relationship is what defines it for me. And one interesting thing about relationship is that it grows. So when we say relationship growth, does it not mean that maybe he spoke to me the first time and then I had to bear, I had to face the consequences of that. And the second time I've learned my lessons, and so I listen. And then the third time, so over a period of time, I am growing in that relationship to the point that when he now tells me what to do, number one, I have learned what it means to hear him, different ways I perceive it when he is talking to me. And secondly, I know that it's better for me to obey when I hear him speak to me than to follow my own agenda and all that. So I just want to emphasize that word relationship, because for me, that is where we get to establish how God speaks to us, and then how that's even when you can begin to obey when he talks to you. If you don't have a relationship with him, I don't think you can hear him in the first place, not to talk of obeying or allowing him to interrupt your normal schedule. That's just what I feel I want to bring to the table.
Wow. Tarfa, I would like to ask you a question. Is there a place for such speakings of God to the hearts of men for someone who is in the marketplace? Or to put it more directly, does God talk to you about your business? Or is he just talking about spiritual things? Tarfa?
That question looks like a trap. When I say anyway, to be frank with you, so the truth is, there's a scripture that says, to the merciful, I'll show myself mercy. Now, there is a measure which you, sorry, that's not what I wanted, but let me use that temporarily. The point is, it's to measure to allow him. That's how much he will be involved. So there's an element of, the truth is, yes, he wants to be involved in every part of your life. But you also have to allow him. But the more important thing is that I don't see my business as my business. Ideally, my business is a subset within him. So I'm not myself. I'm working for him. So I think rephrasing the sentence or restructuring the comment, it is more, I'm not working for myself. I'm working for him. Okay. So whether I now need to say whether my consulting is directly for him, I can use a whole session to describe that. But for now, I'm working for him.
Oh, because our viewers,
and I think I'm going to do the threshing floor to have given up. So I'm dead to myself. Yes, go ahead. Our
viewers are not hearing you properly, and me too, I'm not hearing you properly. And so I'll try to reiterate what you've just said to see if that is what you've said. You are saying that you see yourself as working for him, that you are not alone, and to the extent to which you allow him is the extent to which he can have an influence, in your business, right? Can you shed more light on that? And if you can speak a little bit more slowly, or if possible, use the speaker of your telephone. I think that Bluetooth is not helping.
Okay. Yeah. It would take me a few seconds to change my settings. Okay. Can you hear me now? It will take a few minutes to do that, but let me try this.
Okay.
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
Okay. Simply put, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm working for him. I'm in the kingdom. He's in charge. He has deployed me in a particular department, which is where I am now. And the overall objective, make money, influence people, meet people, is for his overall agenda. Yes, so there's no question of, whether or not I'm involving him or not. The question of course, in the tactics, 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 that one, it's a case of allowing him to navigate the direction, which proposals to push out, which deals to pursue, what people. But generally, he's behind the scenes. And how I know that is that the big junctions, when we get to those big junctions, who we are going to be in partnership with, who you're going to bring in, who you're going to let go, he's part of those decisions.
Okay.
But whether or not to switch on the lights or to on the generator,
Okay.
I think he has given me enough initiative to sort that one.
Okay.
Except he chooses to interrupt.
Oh, lovely. So you are saying that he influences your big decisions, including things like hiring, things like letting go of people, things like which project you should pursue. You get instructions from him on such matters. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Either directly or in reference to the principles of his word.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, now someone might want to know. I'm still on you, Mr. Tarfa. How exactly does this happen? How exactly does this happen? Because a lot of people are asking this, hearing from God influencing you, and it's being so reasonable, so practical. How to write a proposal, who to write a proposal to. How really does this happen?
All right, very quickly. I like to explain the journey of our walk with God like that of a child. Now, when you look at a baby, so those of us who have children and those who have observed children, there's a point in their life that they look dumb. They can't hear you, you can't hear them. Everything is almost like trial and error. And it gets to a point where they begin to mature and understand carefully and normally, to the point where you can communicate and even pick signals, eye signals. That then it gets to the point where you don't need to see your parents. You already know what your parents expect you to do. And in their absence, you do it. So it is that same journey. So where are you in your journey will determine how that relationship is cultivated. Let me give you a very shocking way that is cultivated. That relationship is cultivated through service. Now, one of the ways, is through service. So when Jacob started his life, he was still very confused. He now went to his mom, and his mom gave him specific instructions. She said, hey, do this, do that, go and cook. That instruction, that's what people don't understand. There's a dimension of being under authority. That is you. That's why Jesus was very impressed at the centurion. And he called that faith because it has to do with taking orders. God is more interested in people taking orders than people having understanding of him but not taking orders at all. There's something about submission that is so powerful. And he taught us that children obey your parents. From your parents, you now start obeying your master, whoever you are in charge of, working diligently. And I think we're taught also in the same book of Ephesians. And then after that, so it's in that process, God will be leading you. God is interested in leadership and he deals with leadership. That's why he gave Jacob Potiphar the dream, because Potiphar was in charge. Leadership is of God. That's how God influences humanity. So the answer to them is, if we learn to be obedient people. Are you following me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Obedient, like now you are doing recording, tributes don't do this, tributes don't do that. That obedience, God is glorified. God is working. To get to a point you trained, you will now know how to think and how to act because God has used you. So that's for the babies who want to understand the babies. The other more, of course, sophisticated ones, God told me, get up, pack your load and move to Lagos. Fantastic. That one, it's also, it's a way of, working with God. But for those who are not there yet and are not going to get there after this phone call, I've just told them how to begin to see every act of authority as an indirect act of God. So Jacob was in Laban's place, but God was using Laban to train the boy, get him ready, and use him to bless him and prosper him because it was Laban's animals that he multiplied. Yes, God blessed Laban for Jacob's sake, but at the same time, it was Laban that had the seed. My point is that same thing with Jacob and same thing with Daniel and the kings. These men were obedient, competent people. And the moment you're obedient and competent, the competence is going to take you further and further in your journey. Because at the end of the day, the results we are talking about here. So my point is, authority is the way, and centurion can be your example.
Wow. Mr. Tarfa, that's a great one. That's a great one. Authority is the way, and the centurion can be your example. And if I understand clearly what you just said, that just the way a child grows and have a relationship with the parents, that's also the same way we go with God. And over time, we begin to know exactly how to please him. And sometimes we just take cues. He doesn't even say something, you just know what his heartbeat is, and you do exactly what he says. And then sometimes, so it's exactly what he wants. And then sometimes you actually have to listen to him. Pastor Tope, I know you're a pastor, you also do a lot of business development work. What do you have to say to someone who is also asking the same question? I want to please God. I want to run a business. I want to run an NGO. I want to do some social work. But how do I really get to hear God?
Hello, Nelson. That's very interesting.
Yes, sir.
But what I've found in my experience, you introduced me as a pastor,
Yes, sir.
is that people live where they are, they project into the future, and they begin to ask questions regarding the future, neglecting where they are.
Mm,
That for me, it's a problem
mm,
because they want to hear what God has to say about what their aspirations, their goals, and all that, but they have neglected the current work, they have neglected the current experience that they are going through. For me, that's a major problem because if I may just say again that a man who is in obedience is a man of faith.
mm,
A man who is also working in obedience is a man who is training him or herself on how to perceive what God is saying or understand the mind of God so that without even waiting for a audible voice or to perceive anything, he knows what to do, just as Emmanuel clearly put it out. But I say that there is always a connection between where you are now and where you are headed. So perhaps it is not uh, it is not so much as asking questions about that which is ahead. Perhaps you need to look at the present. Look at the present in your current experience. Maybe what you are trusting God for is the certain decisions you need to make in your business and whatever. In where you are right now, maybe you are married, maybe you have children and all that. There are certain things that you are currently doing and all that. How involved is God in those little decisions you make? How involved is God in some of the affairs, some of the things that you are doing, currently in your environment? Those things that you don't really consider very important or you don't really consider as what you need to spend time to get God before you make them. How much of God is in that which you are doing currently? Because I will tell you, if you are such that your heart is such that it's open, okay, for to please God, okay, in your current situation, when you are trusting Him for what lies ahead, it is the same. Permit me to use the word structure of obedience that you have built in your heart that you're going to employ when that one comes. When that one comes. If I may just give examples, you introduced me also as someone who is involved in development work and all that. I have been in several situations where I was at a loss. And I will give you a very quick example. I was in a strategy session, just the two of us, and we wanted to design a project management structure for a particular project. And, and I wasn't just flowing. The thing was going on. I wasn't flowing. I didn't know what was going on within me. Okay. And the other party got frustrated that I was not forthcoming. I just told that, see, I told her what was going on, the conflict within me.
yeah.
Nelson, after that session, in fact, we had the session in your office, if I must say.
Yeah.
Okay, after that session, I just got back to reflect more on it. I reflected more on it, and I just perceived that I needed to check some tools that I have on my system. And as I was going through the tools one after the other, I found a particular. I began to just play around with that tool. Just what we needed, that was what we needed. I amended it, and then I began to use. I just amended it, amended the tool, and I began to use it to develop that project management structure. So by the time I finished and I sent it, the other party was wondering, how did I come about this? But I knew within my heart that I haven't left that strategy session, not confused, but not being able to add much value the way I saw it then. Unknown to me, that wasn't the way to go about it.
Wow.
So if I find myself in that situation again, that if I should feel the same way I felt in that strategy session, I will know that perhaps I should just hold on. Maybe this is not the way these things should be done. And I know that if I seek him, the way I know how, allowing him to direct me, I will come up with a solution that everyone can attest to, that, well, those who believe anyway, that it is God that handed this down to me. I don't know if that, I mean, that has been my experience, Nelson. That has been my experience. I am someone who believes that there are so many things I do not know, but I believe God is a revealer of secrets. So if this is my work and I'm meant to add value, and I'm not flowing in a strategy session, that is not the end of it. There is always that intelligence a backup. Well, not a backup, actually. I rely on it. But if I find myself in a situation whereby I seem not to be flowing or contributing well, I can still rely on him to come back and with having a lot of value to add to the process. I hope you answered
fantastic. I'm picking some key things from what you just said. That sometimes you need to step back and more or less stir up the water. Tope, if you don't mind, can you just step back a little bit? Can you just step back a little bit so I can see your yeah. So sometimes I can stir up the water, by just being a little bit more, take a step back, stir up the water, like Daniel say, give us till the next morning. I can have an answer for you. Yeah, you go back and search your heart and say, God, what do you want me to do here? And then open yourself up for divine inspiration. No, that is fantastic. Stafford, do you want to shed more light on this? Because I know you've had so many kind of situations similar to what Mr. Shaba has just shared with us. Do you want to give us some examples of your experiences so far?
Well, not comparing per se now. So what I'll do is, which is something I want to teach Nigerians how to do, is that you don't have to always answer every question. So I'll pass and stick with Pastor Tope's opinion on this, stick to his opinion on this, and say that his opinion is valid for now. So we can move ahead instead of blabbling and saying the obvious.
Okay, lovely.
I'll stick to his point.
Okay, now we're experiencing a COVID-19 crisis or pandemic. The whole world is a shutdown, and someone will be wondering, what is God saying? From a business perspective. I'm a businessman. I do advisory work. Tarfa, I'm sure you're a businessman. You do advisory work. But Pastor Shaba, you're a development worker and you're also a pastor. And I'm asking from a work perspective, a business perspective, from perspective of someone who comes to the marketplace with spirits. What do you think God is saying now, or what do you think are key takeaways we can see, around us? What is happening? Tell us, please.
Is that my question? Or
yeah. We can start with you.
Okay, so very quickly, I would say this pandemic has about three. I mean, there's this. No, it's not three. There's a spectrum of impacts. There's a global impact. There is a continental impact. There is a national impact. There is a local impact, and then there is a personal impact. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, I'm with you.
So when God wants to clearly, not being in rocket, very not rocket science, you can see clearly there's a handwriting on the wall. Okay. When in those days when we read the Bible of the story of Daniel and the handwriting on the wall, it looks very dramatic. And this one almost looks like that, because who is affecting, what is causing to change, what the conversations, the directions, everything shows clearly there's a handwriting on the wall. So, and it was made so simple for us because of probably how the world has just lost its consciousness and its humanity. The world is so commercial. When you think about it, everybody is just focused on themselves. So all these companies that are talking about billions of profit, it is profit now. Let's even survive now. Leave profit. So, it has resetted the world to a point of survival where the last man on the street, is thinking of survival. So now it is important for big men and big women to see what it is like to be at that point. It resets humanity. So for me, I've been saying it to the church. I think we should see this more as a blessing in disguise than actually a torment, especially for the church in Nigeria. And I said, and I made a point in our offline conversation that, I mean, with all due respect, I know we're praying against it, but except the Lord expressly tells you to pray against it. I think we're just moved emotionally when we switch on the TV and we hear 900 people have died in Italy, and we just start rolling on the floor. And, that is our bias. And Nigerians, we have a way of, when there's a bomb blast in Japan, oh God, pray for Japan. When there's a bomb blast in UK, God, pray for Tokyo. But the use in Nigeria. 50 soldiers were ambushed 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's not even a conversation where you and I are having. 50 soldiers. You know what it is? That's prime human resource. Prime human resource lost completely. And we're not even having that conversation. But if you switch on the TV, you saw that 50 people are dead in the school. You just see on your status, pray for. And that for me, Larry, I don't even want to use the words I want to use. My point is, there is a resetting going on across that space. So we need to understand that on the global matter, there are global issues that are dealt with that God is dealing with for the people who are senior. I call it senior in his agenda, the pharaohs. They're having that conversation. And if God blesses you to a point where you can provide insights as Joseph, fantastic. Then now our own at Nigerian level, which I believe is going to give birth to a new regime in terms of thinking and humanity and social work. We're now going to begin to care for our neighbors and so on. You can see the philanthropy that is going on. That is local. So I expect that there will be some significant shifts in Nigeria. Nigerians start asking more questions now. So if you can roll out this number of beds and ventilators, then that means every teaching hospital in this country should be in order. I know what I'm saying now.
Yeah.
Some scientists in University of Just, article was covered in status. They had resurrected 2 ventilators without any payment, without any budgetary allocation, and all the other things that civil servants will demand before they do before they do their work. That means there is capacity to be honest, to be sincere, and to be saving. So that is the heroism that's going to be given birth to after this exercise. So I think there is more good going on. There is more resetting going on than yes, people are going to die. In World War II, almost 10 million people died. Well, maybe not 10, maybe 4-5 million people died.
Okay.
Yes, that was the price of it. And that one was even for me, it was just a foolish decision of that part. My point is that I think there is a lot going on in terms of resetting that we need to see and pay attention to. And we should not be moved by the emotional numbers of people dying. Okay. More people are dying in Africa of other diseases than this. And I'm not disregarding the impact of that or the economic consequences.
Oh, fantastic. Now, still on that same vein of thought of what you've said, what do you advise? A lot of young people are looking up to you. A lot of young people are looking up to us, if I may use that word, and they would like to, get some practical advice. What will you advise in this season?
So that's a very important question you asked, and I like the fact that you're referring to young people because I think there's a mix-up. A lot of the pastors on the pulpit are much elderly, and they understand how they're dealing with it. But we, the younger ones, the conversation is different, and this is the advice. This is it. Every generation has its own, I call it, circumcision experience. What that means is an experience where you go through a certain type of tribulation that births or makes you or gives you a character or a qualification to be able to succeed for the next phase of your life. So our parents, some of them fought civil war. It is that tenacity. I'm not talking about the Southerners now. The Northerners. I'm talking about the Biafrans, the Igbo people in quotes who fought the war. The tenacity it provided, in my opinion, contributed to the way they rose up to become so entrepreneurial and so enterprising that they're probably the richest. The demographic per capita. It's not true, but I can argue that they are probably the richest because of that experience. So same thing with the World War. America became the greatest nation, or rather was on the path to become the greatest nation after the war because they lent to Europe. So my point is, crises come to make us stronger. So the story we tell our children, of course, this is going to make us sober and more vigilant, and it's going to help us to put our hope in. And I think there's better blessing than to put your hope in God, because the Bible says, "Cursed is the man that puts his hand in flesh." All along, man was beginning to feel invincible, and all the technology we're experiencing, artificial intelligence, AI coding, we're thinking that man is about to happen. And then when you switch on CNN and tell you about people living longevity, small virus that we cannot see has cleared everybody. So my point is, it will resuscitate our trust in God, which is a blessing, but more importantly, it will circumcise us to a point where we now have a conscience. So we'll become sober like our parents. We'll not be in a hurry. Some of us are going to be saved of terrible things, terrible mistakes because of this. So the source of this experience will make us more vigilant, which is what the Bible says we should, and more reflective, and more introspective, and more careful about life. And that will make us better people in the long run. So we'll be able to look into our eyes of children and tell them, no, you can always plan like the world will never come to an end. You tell them that the world can actually come to an end. I've seen it before and it can happen again. And I'm sure there'll be another incident like this in our lifetime, or at least in our children's lifetime. So this is what it does. It builds a character that makes us successful.
Wow. 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 That's a lot, man. Wow. It bets a character that will make us successful. So you are telling the young person that they should maximize this opportunity. They should allow.
They should embrace it.
They should do what?
Especially the ones in Nigeria. Embrace it. The ones in Nigeria.
Yeah, they should embrace this challenge and make the most out of it.
And use it to build character. If I can survive, if I can survive COVID, I can survive a lot of other things. That's what this is saying.
Lovely. Okay, Pastor Tope, I want to hear from you on the same vein. What do you think we should take away from this experience, and what do you advise young people to make of this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nelson. I mean, I was so blessed by what Emmanuel shared earlier and all that. But the first thing that what we've been hearing lately is that the world has changed the way we used to know it.
Yeah.
That there's a shift has already occurred. Things are no longer the way they should.
Yeah.
Things are no longer the way they were, and all that. Nelson, I believe that with all of my heart. But I also believe that there are benefits, just as Emmanuel said, benefits inherent in this crisis. I believe that. But Nelson, it is only those who believe that there are benefits to be derived from this crisis that we actually take something away from it. I believe that COVID-19 will come and go. Nelson, I really need to tell the audience this. Life will return back to normal. Things will go back to the way they used to be. After it, things have changed. Things are no longer the way they are. But the point I'm trying to make is that it won't be on the surface. It won't just be, it won't be on the surface. So some of us may wake up and we suddenly realize that the things we used to hold on tightly to are no longer important. They are no longer important. You know, the other day we were talking, I think somebody was talking in British Parliament and he was saying that the people we regard as low skilled, the cleaners, garbage collectors and all that, that they seem to be the ones playing the heroic roles currently because of COVID-19 and all that. So my first advice to young people is for them not to, don't think the world will just change. The world has already changed. You must embrace and begin to seek what exactly, from sector to sector, what exactly is no longer going to be the same as a result of this, this global experience and all that. You know, there is hardly any thought around solutions and all that for COVID-19 that is not global. That is not a global thought. Emmanuel said earlier on, and I agree with him, he said the impact is both local, national, and global. And I believe the solution will also be local, national, global, and whatever other categories you want to come up with. So I will say that young people should begin to engage, begin to seek to understand what this means, to begin to imagine. I think that's the word I've been looking for. They must begin to imagine the world post-COVID-19. And when you are imagining, we're not just talking of just imagination in isolation of whatever. We are talking about what exactly are you, what career are you pursuing? What sector do you want to participate in? What level of input have you made into those sectors and all that currently? And then, but beyond all those things you have achieved so far, you must go beyond that analysis and begin to ask yourself, what has changed? What has changed in the way I perceive this sector? What has changed in the way I perceive the relationship between countries? What has changed? Now, what you begin, Nelson, I don't know if this has come to your attention.
Okay.
I've not verified this, so I must let the audience know I have not verified it.
Yeah.
But I think it might be true that face masks and other equipment meant for another nation got intercepted by.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pastor Tope is quiet. I can't hear him again.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah,
hear him?
yeah. I think I can't hear him anymore. His network suddenly went off.
It's modern pirate. Hello,
Yeah.
hello, Nelson.
We lost you
Yes,
at
sir, we missed you.
we lost you at the point where you said face mask was intercepted. Please, you can
Yes,
continue.
that's a number of equipment or I don't want to call it relief materials, but health, something that the health workers we use and order. We heard that these things got intercepted by another country. As in imagine something meant for Germany got intercepted, and because the manufacturer was a US manufacturer, US fell. Sorry, well, I don't know if I should mention the name of the nations, but that's what I read.
Yeah.
Okay, all these things are happening. So the question I'm asking myself is that what kind of relationship will exist between nations? How does that impact on diplomacy, on business, and things like that? I believe that we need to expand our thinking beyond that which is just local. You are just looking. I mean, COVID-19 has really shown us that we are more connected than we think. I know the terminology global village has been around for so long, but this is really showing us that you see that the world is actually more connected than we think.
Yeah.
Just this morning, a friend sent me an email, and US is already doing. I don't know. This is another thing I need to really verify. But I checked them; they were legit. They're already seeing how to grant green card to those who have skill, who wants to come around. You know, my wife is a nurse. A number of people sent me that circular that came out from the US that health workers can apply for visa in the nearest US embassies and all that. We need to begin to take these things into considerations and ask ourselves what sort of environment are we going to have in the world post COVID-19. So I guess the main point I'm making, Nelson, is that the changes and the shifts that have occurred will not be obvious. It will only be obvious to the one who is actually looking out for answers, the one who is actually trying to analyze and see what is really going on. And I believe as people of faith who also believe in reason, we must begin to engage the news. We must begin to engage the information that is coming out from different quarters around the world. But the difference with us is this. In analyzing this news and all that, we must understand that there is news, there is that news behind the news. There is that news behind the news. In all the things you are hearing, you must go beyond what you have received and ask yourself, what do I make of this? What do I make of this? I think that is where true value is. And I think that is where our eyes become open and we're able to see the shifts and the changes that have occurred in the world. Otherwise, we will just wake up, coronavirus is over, but we are still yet, we are unable to make anything out of it, either as a church or as a business person or as just a young person who is growing and hoping that he will participate in a particular career or in a particular sector later on.
Wow. I like those thoughts, and I'll kind of summarize it for our audience. One, the world has changed, but it may not appear so afterwards. I mean, it won't be on the surface. If you are not careful enough to search and dig deeper to understand the changes that will happen in the relationship between nations, in the way people treat their citizens, in the way people go about their businesses, even our concept of globalization and the new laws that would emanate out of that, and the new policies and strategies that will emanate out of that. If you are not careful to take note of those changes, you will not be able to make any adjustments to reflect that. So all of us must become deeper. You must become deeper with God. You must become deeper in your thinking. You must become deeper in your analysis of world events. You must become more responsible, like Mr. Tarfa said, to say, okay, I am a significant person in the scheme of things. My thoughts matter. My actions matter. The way I can contribute significantly. And Tarfa said there is a new paradigm where we are looking beyond ourselves. beyond what we're going to make in terms of money, but how we can be a better contributor to the society, because COVID has shown us that some things are not important. Some things are simply not important. If you don't get that point, maybe you've gotten nothing out of this COVID crisis. So, gentlemen, we are rounding up. We have just about 5 minutes to go. Tarfa, what are your closing remarks to our audience? What do you have to say in closing? Thank you. Tarfa, your closing remarks.
Mute your mic.
Yes, I was saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I was saying. Thank you for the privilege to share. I cracked a joke to someone. I said in Facebook lately, there are more people sharing knowledge than there are people to listen. There are more teachers than students on Facebook.
Yeah.
But forgive me. I mean, the truth is that we may be doers of this word and not just what Pastor Tope said, in some concluding remarks. I think it's a personal thing for us, especially for young people. One of the things that I observed is that this COVID-19 has sort of exempted them. The plague is not affecting them. So, per se, I mean, with the statistics, you can see it's stubborn. But the summary, let's go back to the basics of our relationship with God to find that's where our compass will take off from. And our compass will be able to give us direction on how to tap into this opportunity. I think that's the most important thing. Fundamentals, praying to God, trusting God, making direct, deliberate conversations or prayers on that. To tie up my point, I want to say something, right? Young people are synonymous with, or being young, or being a baby or a child, is synonymous with being foolish because of the inexperience, because of the lack of, trials and tribulations. But what makes an adult is I've seen it all. So when you get a dose of this type of COVID-19 type of crisis, right, we should have scholars, people who sit down and study. Someone should literally even be documenting, paying attention to the professors' conversations, because who knows, in another 20, 30 years, this may happen again, and some of us will be in authority. And in the lessons we have drawn here that we ought to demonstrate, those are the ones that will distinguish themselves, are the ones that have learned from this. Let's not just act and pretend like, okay, things go back to normal, this will happen again. It's a cycle. It may not come in this wave. It may come and be national, continental, or regional. But the bottom line is that there's always a cycle. So let's be equipped. Listen to the news sometimes, of course, the good news. Listen to the presidential, all the different presidents, governors giving their addresses. Watch their body language. Watch how they manage. Those are quick wins, basic lessons, ABC, that you can even use in your own business and your own life. When there's a crisis, you can always address people, how to act confident. You see the winners, you see the losers in terms of, people who have won people's hearts on the matter. Learn from all this. And, of course, we trust God on the side of history. Those are my closing remarks. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Tarfa. Can we take the closing remarks from Pastor Shaba?
Thank you so much, Nelson. What else can you put on what the wisdom that Tarfa just gave us and all that? I just want to, I just would like to remind believers that more than ever before, this is the time to support people. Let's remember there are those infected with the virus. There are also those who are affected by the virus. Okay, if we can pray, fine. But if beyond prayers you have things to share with people around you, please go ahead and do that, because this is not the time for us to close our eyes to the needs of those who are around us. I think it's very, very important for us to do that. The Bible says, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. So love is that distinguishing factor. And in this situation, people won't misunderstand it. If you preach gospel or the gospel, or you say something, they may misunderstand it. But this time, they can almost associate every act of kindness to your faith. Almost. I'm not saying in all situations. So I just want to encourage us to, let's just be there for people. Let's check on people. Let's find out how they are doing. As a pastor, I have a number of people that were, even before COVID-19, they were depressed. There were people who we check on from time to time. How much more now that there's a lockdown? So I'm just trying to encourage people to do more and just be there for people at this time. People are going through a lot, and we really, really can do the little we can to bring relief to them before all this is over. Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you so much, Pastor Tope. And with that, we say thank you so much for listening to us. The Heart and Heart Foundation is an international non-profit, non-governmental organization dedicated to the provision of relevant education that bridges the gap between the heart and the mind by promoting the gospel of Christ in everyday life. We are focused towards achieving the much desired coherence between the ideals of the heart and the excellencies of the heart, that is, the salvation of the mind. The Secrets in the City events are a series of events that focus on the big questions of life. We are so glad to have had you here with us. Thank you so much. Feel free to share this video with your friends and colleagues, and stay tuned. Every week we're bringing you series of events like this. Thank you so much. I'm your host today, Mr. Nelson Okwonna. God bless you. Bye-bye.